when you need to go around the governing documents. And somebody said on the panel before we went live that it was dangerous, that it was a dangerous topic. I forgot who said that. Does anybody remember who told me?
Greg said
Greg. Greg said that's a dangerous topic. So we're going to see if it is. Before I do anything else, I am going to poll the audience for CEUs. If you are here for CEUs, click the right CEU option. Everyone has a question feature. Please send comments. It was so awesome, I think, the last live stream, because I got so many comments that I just loved it. I love when I'm inundated with them. I absolutely love hearing from the audience. It plays a major role in what we do. I don't use anyone's names, so you should feel free to ask whatever you like to ask. And I'm going to close the poll. If I ended up closing the poll before you had time to fill it out, don't worry. Use your question feature and say, hey, Ray, I need CEUs. Tomorrow, there's going to be a manager panel. We've been doing them. I like doing them. They're very relaxed. I don't know. We really don't have a set topic. I always pick something to talk about, but off the top of my head, I don't remember what it was going to be about. Let me see. I could probably tell you. I can't. I'm not going to waste time on it. Oh, how to make things better. So if you want to learn how to make things better, tune in tomorrow at 1:40 and you'll get advice. I'm going to change things up. I'm going to start doing last minute programming. So there's a lot of times I'm sitting around and I think of Kevin Herschel. I just do. He just pops into my head. And I said, man, I wish I could.
That scares me, Ray.
I was like, man, I really need some advice. I want to learn something today. I'm going to call Kevin Herschel. And maybe Kevin will jump on. He's not very busy. He's going to jump on and he'll do a recording with me. Maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour. Maybe I'll call Dave at the last minute and he'll join in, and Todd. But those are great sessions to participate in as a viewer, because we're very relaxed, because we know we're going to edit afterwards. So I'm going to start throwing them out there for people. And if it goes an hour, you can still get CEUs. I may just need to submit them afterwards. If you're interested in that, use your question feature and tell me if you want me to contact you through LinkedIn or email, because those are the only two places. I'm not going to do email blasts. It would just be ridiculous. I'm just going to send it to people who want to get those last minute emails. When I mean last minute, it could be like a couple days or something. Don't get me wrong. But LinkedIn or email would be great. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. This is how it is right now. Sometimes it's kind of boring. These things are going to be a lot more fun and interesting. That almost looks like, I would say it looks like a young John Lagumi. I'm not sure. If I made it, what do you think? Possible, John?
Oh, yeah, entirely.
Okay, excellent. We will be talking, they will be educational. I know people, I may call people on the phone. Isn't that exciting, Dave? We may pick up the phone and just call somebody out of the blue live.
Nobody answers calls with that unless they know who's calling.
Because
so no one's going to pick that in. Nobody's going to answer that call.
Because it's a smaller group, we can get away with all that. And we could call anybody. It's an open time frame, and I could edit things in and out afterwards. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. Okay, with that being said, let me have our panel introduce themselves with who I see first, and that is Greg.
Good morning, everyone. Greg Girelli with Girelli Insurance Agency. We're located in Cold Spring, New York, and we have insurance programs for community association master policies throughout the Hudson Valley and surrounding tri-state area.
Now, Greg, are you frightened today about this topic as an insurance rep or just as someone who knows this industry in general?
As an insurance rep. So I don't think there's any getting around your documents because that sounds like something that could be challenged.
Okay, so half the people just left because you just said that, and they don't need to be here then. I think there is going to be a way to get around to it, Greg, and we will see what happens. John.
John Lagumina from the Lagumina Law Firm in Purchase, New York. We represent condominiums, co-ops, and HOAs from Manhattan up to the Hudson Valley area.
Looks like Todd is in Alaska. He's really not, but that's what it looks like. Todd.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Todd Vignola, Adventures Construction Professionals, located in Hillsborough, New York. We specialize in the care and maintenance for community-style living, condos, townhomes, etc. Thanks for having me.
Now, Kevin, Todd fell out of a tree with just a knife, took on that bear. He had no real winter garb, wore that, and then walked 30 miles in a blizzard to save
No,
himself.
I think the real question was the bear trying to get around the governing documents, and is that what happened
Maybe.
to it, or not? I mean, that's really what I want to know.
That's why we're afraid.
Oh, okay. I'm going to start referring to Dave Byrne as the animal lover because he truly is an animal lover.
Just adopted a new dog yesterday too, as a matter of fact. My name is Dave Byrne. I am the chairperson of my law firm's community association practice group, Ansel Law, and we represent homeowners associations, condominiums, and co-ops in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York.
Now, Dave always adopts dogs that they're missing a leg, they can't hear, they're blind. The one you have right now can't hear. He always picks the ones, Greg, that no one else wants. He does. But did you give yourself a break this time, Dave? Did you adopt an animal that's 100% all there, or did you once again?
No, he seems normal so far. Whoever had him before apparently thought it was a good idea to tape his mouth shut for a period of time. So he's doing good now. He's doing good now though, because humans are horrible people. That's why. Jesus. And Kevin and I and John, we focus our law practices on recognizing that truism.
How do I even go? What is going on today? Talking about a bummer. Oh, now I hate humans when they mistreat animals. The audience is agreeing with you. I actually hate humans too that mistreat animals.
Horrible people.
Kevin, please try to cheer us up a little bit, please.
All right. So I am Kevin Herzl. So I'm the managing member of Herzl Law. We represent community associations in the great states of Michigan and Illinois. And I do have a pro animal story. So we had a fence that was put in around our pool. And we have probably like a 10-pound little Shih Tzu. And he saw there was a bunch of deer on the other side of the fence in the common area this morning. So he did get out. He squeezed his little butt through the fence and started chasing them around. Fortunately, he was small enough that nobody was harmed. No deers were harmed. I don't have any pelts to put up on my wall. And we didn't tape his mouth shut, but he did come back through the fence when we called him. So that was fantastic. And hopefully that brightens everybody's day up today.
Well, we're happy for him. We're happy that he had a little adventure and that he returned safe and that no other animals were harmed.
His name is Enzo, but we also affectionately call him Stitch because he's pretty much like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. So always into trouble.
All right, I'm going to go to the audience on this, and then we got to get started. Audience, I think having a nickname for a dog is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. It's such a waste of a nickname. I mean, I never heard of a dog that has a nickname because most of the names are already like that. Is preposterous, Kevin. Absolutely preposterous.
No, my last dog had a nick. I had a nickname for her.
Wait a minute, I'm wrong. I have a nickname for my dog. It's Liberty. I call him Mama. I have 4 boxers. They have a nickname. I'm sorry. I stand corrected, Kevin. And thank you, audience. Obviously, people have nicknames. I still think it's ridiculous, Greg, to be honest with you, but okay. Doesn't it confuse the dog too? But we don't have time to talk about dog training. Okay. I got a question from the audience I want to bang out really quick.
You're going to have to save that for the phone call that I get in the middle of the day when I'm waiting around doing nothing. Then I'll give you my dog training tips, right?
Oh, we're calling you like 2 a.m. I want to see what you're up to. All right. I am told that auto renewal clauses are no longer allowed. We have a contract with an onerous, did I pronounce it right? Auto renewal. Onerous auto renewal clause. Is that true? Are auto renewal clauses no longer allowed? John, New York. I know this is in regard to like a management company.
Yeah, I mean they are allowed, but there's a statute in New York that may apply to management agreements, and one of the requirements is if you do have such a clause, in order for it to be enforceable, you have to separately, independently notify the customer at a certain time period before the contract automatically renews. So you can't like surprise them at the end. Okay. You gotta like warn them, hey, in 90 days it's gonna auto renew. So
Okay.
yeah, there are some very strict limitations in New York.
All right. Todd, you can take off and you're going to come back. So, because you're going to do a construction segment.
Great. Thanks, Ed.
Dave, short answer, because this isn't the topic we're going to do today. How about auto renewal club? I know it's about management companies. You're not allowed to have them in New Jersey, or you are?
No, you are. You are.
Okay. All right. Kevin.
So generally speaking, they're going to be okay in Michigan and Illinois. The one statutory exception, though, is if the developer or declarant enters into the contract.
It's true.
There typically is an out, as long as you notify, the management company within a certain time frame afterwards. So it may, that may be sticking with today's theme, a way around it for what it says. But generally speaking, I agree with John and David that that's why you need the attorney to review it.
Yeah, there are controls like that in Pennsylvania and New Jersey as well. Kevin, good point.
I forgot to mention Valerie, who's extremely dependable, she emailed me last night very late, and she had to go to court to testify. So she tried everything she could do to work around it. So that's why she's not there. If South Carolina, this is going to be very general, I think, today anyway, but if South Carolina questions come up and we don't feel comfortable going in that direction, I'm going to get back to those people. But I know I can get Valerie back also to do a recording. So I'll grab Valerie and we'll just kind of fill in the blanks here for South Carolina. But people are telling me South Carolina is the same as John said. South Carolina 37-6-120. I don't know. Okay, well, there you have it. I don't know who told me that, so take it with a grain of salt. But thanks. I appreciate it much so, audience. Poll: have your governing documents ever done more harm than good? And this is kind of like what we're about today. Have your governing wow, it's coming in pretty hard. Okay, now it's bouncing around. Let's see what happens.
That's close to a no-brainer question as possible.
Is it?
Oh yeah.
Maybe some people.
I mean, so.
Greg seems to really love the governing documents. He's very nervous about, not following exactly to a T. Okay, I'm going to end a poll. So obviously, most people said they absolutely do end up causing more harm than good. And let me close the poll. And tell me if I don't close the poll, because I hate this new system. So understanding the role and limits of governing documents. I broke this down into 10 questions to get through today. But we're also going to talk about when state law overrides the governing documents and moving forward while protecting the associations. So these are all the topics. So first question I have is a basic one. Please, we don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Greg, I'm going to let you answer it if you're comfortable. What are the governing documents designed to do within an association? If you're not, don't answer it.
I'm the non-attorney here, so I don't know about that one, but they're designed to set the rules and regs and how they operate, set the board, do elections, and a lot of general parameters. Problem is they're usually very old and written poorly.
Just do what I do. I'm not afraid to give my legal commentary on things, as long as these guys are here to say, that you're wrong. Okay. John, is that accurate? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, so for condominiums, the bylaws have a lot of the corporate governancing. So unit owners, how they meet, board members, how they meet, what their authority is. You'll have a maintenance section, and depending on, you might have a section at the end about selling and leasing and rights of first refusal, and then go into the declaration part of it. Those usually are like, they define the common elements, eliminate common elements, what's part of the unit. A unit's usually defined like as an envelope. Anything inside is a unit. Anything outside the sheetrock envelope is common element. That's kind of, and then easements. So,
Kevin, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but they're the most important documents for a board, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a sports game, card game, whatever it is. It sets the rules of the game that everybody needs to play by. And the only kind of second point I would add to it is, every state, has a unique set of laws that have a bunch of different requirements that need to be in there in order for people to actually buy and sell, property, establish a condominium, that kind of thing. So it's really designed, I think, to set up the rules of the game, and then also to comply with the law, so you can actually, have ownership, convey property, that kind of thing.
Dave, before we go any further, as a general rule, not following the governing, don't get way ahead of me in the topic, but as a general rule, not following the governing documents is not a good idea. Like Greg is saying, he's terrified.
As a general rule, sure, it's definitely not a good idea. I think the response to the sort of the governing documents cause more harm than good kind of thing is the reason I thought it was a no-brainer is because documents are created by developers, sponsors. They're created to the extent that they're not regulated by state law. Like Kevin said, some things have to be in documents, or the regulatory agency that's involved won't approve it. But other than that, provisions are set by the developer. Some provisions are set because the developer thinks it'll make it easier to sell units. Some are set because the developer is using the same lawyer he used 40 years ago, and it's just copying stuff over. Some because the developer is building an HOA now, but the last time he used these documents, he was building a condo, and he hasn't changed the language in them. So that's why I think I say that for the most part, and I think the lawyers have probably had that experience. Sort of the idea these documents they don't come from like a heavenly power. They come from a developer, which is okay. That's the way it works. But developers have their own interests when they create documents.
And a lot of commentary from the audience that they've had to make up to 16 amendments to governing documents over the years. Many people commenting that their documents are completely outdated and they just completely cause a lot of problems. And by the way, audience, when it looks like I'm not paying attention, I really am. I'm just watching the panel and keeping track of some of these questions I want to get to. And any questions I don't get to, I try to get back to everyone. All right, so we know what the governing documents are. We know that Greg is terrified. He's scared. He's sweating right now. He's absolutely traumatized by this topic. Question number 2. I will start with Kevin and work my way back. In what situation can state law, see, I'm going to come up with something already, Greg. In what situation can state law override your association's governing documents?
Every situation. So one of the fundamental principles of governing documents is that they do have to comply with the parameters of state law. A great example, for example, is like a homeowner's energy solar policy, which we have in Michigan and Illinois. If you put in a provision that says solar panels are completely banned and that doesn't comply with state law is going to override that. There's only one overriding exception, is basically federal law is going to trump state law. So if there's something that federal law would say okay, state law is not okay, that's the one you need to comply with because of the supremacy clause in the Constitution. But generally speaking, state law is going to rule the day.
And Dave, this was an easy one for me to throw out there, and the other ones are going to get more complex. A lot of associations don't feel the need to even bother trying to change the documents because state law and federal law overrides. So they just leave the documents alone and go on with their day. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's a logical thing to do. Documents are automatically amended by virtue of state and federal law. So what's the point of doing it? They're also challenging. It's also very challenging to amend them. John was saying before about the in New York, declaration and bylaws. I think all states have that sort of dichotomy. I think the another distinction is as also what John was saying was master deeds and or declarations are traditionally more difficult to amend. They usually require a supermajority of all the owners, whereas bylaws are often able to be amended by virtue of a supermajority of just the people who vote, which is definitely a lot different. And I'll say one last thing. In New Jersey, we have a relatively new law that allows bylaws to be amended through what we call sort of the negative vote, which is the board amends the bylaws. And unless more than 10% of the owners reject the amendment, it automatically takes effect. But that applies only to bylaws, not to, like John was saying, not to a declaration or the master deed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Panel, I want to stay focused today, though. We don't want to do a whole topic on just governing documents and how to change them and all this other kind of stuff. I want to stay focused on the topic, which is when can you not pay attention to your, under what situations can you not obey your governing documents? What situation? John, do you have any commentary to add? Or can I move on?
No, I mean, the statutes supersede and they control, right? Sometimes even if you have a conflict, Dave mentioned a declaration and the bylaws are different. The declaration usually controls over the bylaws, but yeah, like if you're asking, like you still, as Greg appropriately fears, you still have to follow your documents.
All right, I would prefer if you exaggerate Greg's emotions because that's what I've been doing. So,
So I
All
want to add one more quick thing. And I
oh
hope
my
that
gosh.
Greg
Okay.
doesn't get
You
too
guys,
scared here.
I knew this would happen with you guys and the governing documents. Go ahead.
So this is what scares me, is that when state law overrides it and the documents aren't amended, most of the people that volunteer and get on these boards, they don't know what state law is, so they pick up their documents and they're going to do what it says anyways. And that's actually the most scary thing to me, because they have good intentions, but they're unknowingly violating state law by following their documents. So that would be one reason for best practices. You should update it just to avoid that situation happening.
All right, now I'm falling into the trap. Can you update it without can you just make a note in your governing documents and don't get approval from the owners? Like, don't actually change it. Just can you put notes in your governing documents so future boards say, hey, this one, is no longer valid because of state law. Can you touch the governing documents like that, Kevin?
So generally speaking, no, unless state law allows it. So for example, we have a law that allows the board to just get rid of discriminatory covenants. And so you don't need to go through the voting process and do all those things. But that wouldn't apply to something like solar panels if you wanted to amend that provision. I mean, there's certainly arguments for a non-material amendment or for compliance. You may not need an owner vote for it, but it really kind of depends on what you're doing. But I definitely do not recommend the handwritten note.
Okay. That's interesting. All right. Any of the other attorneys have any disagreement, any different opinion on that or different angle on it? Okay. A handwritten, can you put a post-it note? Somebody's asking. Would you accept that, Kevin? A post-it note on there?
Well, probably not. And here's the reason. So I saw my parents this weekend, and my dad gave my mom a sweet estate card, and he put a post-it note on the inside of it and signed his name. And then he took it off and gave it to my brother so he could give it to his wife. So that kind of thing, I wouldn't want that to happen with the governing documents. That's why I'm afraid of post-it notes, Ray.
Fascinating. Can we get him on the live stream? And he got away with it. That's amazing. He's still married. It's amazing. All right. Things are starting to fall into place now. All right. So I'm going to go to some no-win scenarios. I don't know any. I hope you guys are good, but I think there's one here from the audience, and I'm reading him as I see him. So I could be wrong. If state law allows for electronic elections and the governing doc says that they're be held at the annual meeting along with accepting floor nominations, does this allow for nominations to be taken electronically prior to the annual meeting so all candidates are listed on the electronic ballot? John, I'll start with you. Like, this is a really common one, right? Like, the governing documents could be fuzzy with electronic voting. Do you agree?
Well, the government documents they're not going to mention it at all. But in New York, it came out of COVID and now it's permanent. You can have remote annual meetings, which means you can have remote elections, right? But the issue of nominations from the floor, that's another, in practice, you see it all the time in the bylaws. I don't know if I've ever seen, I think I've seen it like once or twice. Mostly bylaws don't mention it. So my advice is, like, if you're gonna take nominations from the floor, it's fine, but you ought to put that in your meeting notice. And if you're not gonna have nominations from the floor, but you've had them for the last 20 years, you should also make that clear in your meeting notice. So all this has to be, it can be set up, but you have to do it in advance, and you can't surprise owners at the meeting when they show up. This is how we're doing it. Your meeting notice should be very clear.
So don't scribble anything in the governing documents, but you certainly at your meeting, make sure you do proper record keeping so you could go back and there's a history of why the board did what they did. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
Dave, any commentary on this before we dive deeper?
Yeah, well, I'll add. I think I'll add one thing for you that's useful. John's on the money. I think it's in terms of New York, but New Jersey has a interesting dynamic as well with the law I mentioned earlier about amending the bylaws. The same law has pretty much outlawed nominations from the floor and has mandated that associations allow write-ins. The legislature specifically says that the ballots you send out have to have open spaces for write-ins. There are specific rules about how the candidates have to be laid out in the ballot alphabetically, other types of things. And then by extension, that pretty much precludes any nominations from the floor because that would distort the nature of the ballot that's used. So that's what we have in New Jersey now, which in a lot of ways, unusually for government, has made things easier.
Okay. Kevin, anything to add?
Just where I'm at, it typically will, the state statute will say, unless it's expressly precluded by your documents, you can take advantage of, the e-voting and those kind of things. I agree with the other two guys. Adopt a board resolution that sets the rules of the game before you have the election, put it in the notice, and that's the best way to handle it.
Okay, so I'm going to go to question 5 and then go back to 4 because I put them out of order. Greg, are you ready for what I feel is my second example of when a board, don't listen to me, audience. Remember, what I say means nothing. Just listen to Dave, Kevin, and John. But Greg, I'm hoping this is going to be an example of when a board doesn't have to follow the governing documents. Are you ready, Greg?
I'm ready, and you're coming up with good ones because obviously following local law is a good reason.
Oh, well, that was easy, Greg. I mean, that was like, I knew that one. Okay. What are safe steps a board could take during an emergency without owner approval? There's something going on at the condominium. I'm always thinking like a high rise. There's a danger that's taking place and they need to make major repairs, but the governing document says, hey, you got to go through all these steps before you could spend this money, or you could do that, or you could do that. But they don't have time to go through this process. And what happens if the owners don't even vote for it for their own good? We all saw this with the collapse, right? The collapse is another prime example. They did have a board, I believe, that went and said, hey, we got to increase our fees. And then the owners voted it down. And the board took no action following the governing documents. Are you ready, Greg, for the answers? You must admit that's a good one, right?
I'm ready to hear this. Yep.
Dave, that's a real case scenario?
Real case scenario. This happens a little bit. I've seen it happen on occasion over 30 plus years. And I tell the board members that they have some obligation to go through the process, try to get a vote, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing that's going to imperil the building, frankly, is going to have come up. Something that's going to imperil the building in an emergency basis is unlikely to have just been discovered. This is probably something that's been talked about for a long time. So you have an emergency type of problem. But anyway, bottom line is I tell the boards, look, you have an obligation to try to work out the process as the documents require. But frankly, if the owners vote against the necessary funds, and you have reason to believe that absent the necessary funds, people will be hurt, you probably should resign. Or you should go to court and get a judge to override the owner's vote. Those are your two choices, but you can't. I mean, like, I always look at it like if my mother is on a board and she came to me, I say, if the owners won't give you the funds to fix the building, you have to quit. Can't be on the board when the building falls down. Or you're going to have to get the funds to hire a lawyer to go get a judge to let you do it despite the owner's vote. That's how I would play it.
So we've gone even further because now we're talking about changing the governing documents, not even as an emergency. The owners are voting it down. You're doing the assumption that you do have time to go through the whole process and the owners vote it down. And your situation is you could still not follow the governing documents if you're on a board or quit. Did I hear you right, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. Depending on the situation, sure.
Kevin, commentary, maybe you have another example.
I think what Dave said was spot on. I mean, and I have seen this. The only point that I would add to this is before you even get to this, this is one of the things that developer turnover at the beginning when everybody's talking about old documents. You need to amend your documents to empower boards to handle emergencies like this. It's just a lot of the old documents will say you have to go through all these hoops and owner votes, and this is really where it ends up. So for me, it's being proactive before you have a problem to empower the board to handle the situation.
Here's a great one. Someone is mentioning there was an issue with a sprinkler system. And I guess that a whole bunch of actions had to take place that may have gone against the governing documents for some reason without owner approval. John, I'm taking a guess here, and I'm even changing the scenario a little bit. You got a sprinkler system. Maybe it's going to fail. Maybe it's not going to fail. You can't risk it as a board. So you're going to have to go against the governing documents and take action. Yes? No?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in virtually every set of governance documents I've ever looked at, the board has very broad authority to take measures, including emergency measures, as part of their duty to maintain the common areas. You don't need unit owner permission to maintain the common areas, no matter what the cost. And if you do, your governing documents should be amended, because I have a good example. There was one of my clients had a retaining wall literally holding up the building that was starting to collapse, and people were complaining about the costs. And I looked at the documents and said, you have to do this, because your engineer, we have these webinars, and once you have an engineer give an opinion, the cat's out of the bag. It's out of the bag. You now need to do it, and the way to do it is to just get the funds and do it. You don't need unit owners to approve maintaining your common elements.
Greg, did you have and also I want to let you catch up a little bit too here. Did you want to add any insurance commentary? I was going to go to you after I do a couple more, but I just wanted to check in with you.
No, I mean, generally, if it is a true emergency, though, like I agree with what John and everybody was saying, you need to fix and repair the buildings and keep the property safe. The second problem is if it's not an emergency, but you feel you had to do something quickly, that's where you really need to back off, make sure you take your time, because everything gets looked at under a microscope later. When you think something was quick. But if the building's about to fall down, or there's a sprinkler system was a great example that could not be functioning properly, that's a life safety issue that needs to be addressed.
Right. Emergency, like that's going to be debatable, right? Not everything's a life safety issue immediately, and things may or may not be a life safety. The railings are a little bit loose. Is that a life safety issue at this very moment? But what happens if it does fall off the next day and the board didn't do anything? Was that an emergency or not an emergency? Kevin?
I'd say it's an emergency. In fact, it's interesting. I don't know if you were reading the news this morning, but somebody in Ohio, an association, got sued for this exact issue because somebody fell off. And so, especially, if you're in a situation where you're getting citations from the municipality or anything like that, I mean, that's something you got to take care of right away. And as John said, I mean, if your documents are so bad that you can't do that, you should fix those right away.
All right. So you brought up another one, Kevin, that I just thought about. What about if the board is getting citations, right? The town is coming in, it's not an emergency, but the town is coming in and they're saying, look, we're going to shut you down, or we're going to do this. The town is going to do something that's going to drastically impact the association, the health of the association. The board doesn't have time, or they can't get the owners on board because a lot of they're just dumb. In that case, Kevin, can the board override the governing documents and go off on their own and take action?
So, I mean, that's a tough call, because you're probably going to be in a position where it's really the no-win that you had before, because there's probably provisions that say you have to comply with local ordinances and laws and you can't do anything illegal, and then you may have these voting provisions. So, for me, I would probably pick the lesser of the two evils if you're going to have to violate one of the two provisions. And I would also say that the ordinance, would trump the governing documents. But if it's not an emergency, John and David said, I would still go through the process if you're required to have some kind of a vote, to raise those funds and be able to, show that you did that. But if you're in the no-win, situation, I would choose safety and what's going to result in the less liability every single time.
So jump in, Kevin, if I didn't get it right. So what you're saying, it's a lot less worrisome to have the owners come after you for not following the governing documents than have the town come in and shut you down and possibly put you in some form of liability.
Yeah, I mean, because you get the evacuation orders. People are going to sue you for that. Somebody's going to get hurt. If I'm spending money I'm not supposed to,
you're making it too simple. I don't want to let you get away with it. It's not an evacuation order. Remember what I'm saying.
Okay.
We know, hey, if there's an evacuation order, it doesn't matter what the governing document says. You're going to do what you're told, right? The fire department comes and says, I'm not saying that. Let's go back to the original gray area though. The town is coming in and they're fining you. No one's going to die. And it's risking the financial health. And you're saying that basically you may have to overlook your governing documents to satisfy the town's needs, correct?
So yeah, if it's an emergency life safety issue, yes. If it's something that here's $1,000 fine because you have a window broken, no. In that situation, if it's the emergency and there's a conflict, I mean, Greg, cover your ears, but I'd rather have the business judgment rule defense and put in the insurance claim on my D&O if somebody's suing me for that, rather than risk, a 5 million, or $1 billion judgment or something if the whole building collapses and you have all these issues. So it's really choosing the lesser of two evils, and the magnitude really is going to kind of steer, what the best thing to do in that situation is.
All right. So Dave, is a financial devastating impact on the association considered enough of an emergency that the board could take action and not follow the governing documents? Let's say the city it's possible is fining them $30,000 a day, and the association is going to run out of money and there's no time to get in touch with the owners, or the owners vote it down because they're just idiots.
My view is the answer is yes. So we have a specific situation like that in New Jersey. And it might also apply to other sort of high regulatory states like New Jersey, where we have a hotel multiple dwelling law, which applies to apartments and hotels. But 40 years ago, judges decided it also applied to condominiums. So although condominiums are not responsible for the inside of your unit, whether you have grout on your tub and all, whether you have smoke detectors, these kinds of things, the regulatory authority in New Jersey enforces the hotel multiple dwelling law. But because of the Constitution, the government can't force its way into people's units to make them do the work. So they basically force us to do it. So we have to order people to let us in. When they refuse, we have to threaten them with locksmiths, and we have to basically enter the unit. But their documents don't allow us to enter the unit like that unless there's an emergency. Appropriately
Okay.
so, I think. But in order to comply with these regulatory frameworks, which can carry with them significant penalties if you violate them, and huge reinspection fees, it's like a self-funding kind of agency. Oftentimes, the condominium has to basically just knock people's doors down, even though we know ahead of time that we might not have the statutory authority or the governing document authority to do that. But as far as the government's concerned, they don't care, and they have no intention of changing their position.
So here's an interesting comment, and I appreciate the person that sent it, but I want to read it because it shows that sometimes I have to put up with a lot of things that I think boards and managers do. So I got a comment here that says, "Come on, Ray, you must know about the $10 million special assessment leveled by blank condos in blank." I'm not going to say where. It seems as if you are steering the discussion to support the outrageous action of it and threatening to oppose the assessment by fiat. Our board treated the engineer. It's funny that in our industry and other things, believe me, I'm not steering the conversation anywhere. I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's just funny that people would perceive what I'm talking about today as some kind of agenda. For some people, I don't even have the slightest idea who they are. So I just wanted to share that with the managers and boards, that I also get a lot of these comments with my position and job. And I appreciate the person that sent it, but yeah, no, I'm not on an agenda. Kevin, anything to add?
No, nothing else to add on this point. So I mean, it's
Okay.
only, I guess, well, one last thing is, if you don't take care of this, like in Illinois, for example, they can come in and they will deconvert your condominium, and then you won't have to worry about this problem anymore. So I mean, if it does get that bad, I mean, that's another, and I've seen that happen a few times. But like I said, it's just most of the time, if your governing documents don't allow you to take care of it, you either need to fix them or get off the board, is kind of what John and David said, and I agree with that.
John, I don't mind mentioning it by the name of the place. There's a place in Charleston. It's called Dockside. And I could be getting are you familiar with it, John? Anybody familiar with it? The lawyers? Okay. This building was found uninhabitable, and they threw everybody out like immediately. These poor people, like, that's it. They're like, today's Monday, Tuesday, they're out the door. And I could be getting my facts wrong a little bit. And the building is still, and it ends up that the building may be unrepairable at some point. And the question is, can the board go around the governing documents to sell the property since the owners have voted not to repair it? John, this is a prime example, right? Because this is a true story. This building is unrepairable, and they're thinking that they're just going to have to like tear it down and get what they could get for it and maybe build something else. If the board can't get a vote in on that, I would guess that they probably can't do anything, right?
Yeah,
Because they're
I
stuck.
can't imagine. I can't imagine the board could sell it without the owners. First of all, there's owners, they own the inside. There's deeds, I would imagine. How are you going to convey the deeds? And then there's probably a lot of mortgages. So, yeah, the board is not going to be able to sell it.
So I just want to make sure. So financial devastation to an association would warrant the board not following the governing documents, or it would? Kevin, I know I'm repeating the question.
Not for the deconversion aspect of it, but I would say if you were in a situation where you're choosing between the lesser of two evils, the answer is yes. But I would always try and go down the path of compliance first. But if somebody's life, safety, health is going to be in danger, certainly that would be a situation where I would say take the risk, put in your claim on the D&O, and save the situation.
Okay, Dave.
Sorry,
we know life safety.
I knew this was going to be a dangerous and scary episode for you.
I know.
But,
I got it. Life and safety. And safety. Yeah.
John's point is, I was going to say, John's point is a good one, because the practical realities of this kind of scenario would overtake this discussion we're having. I mean, if no one's going to buy it, and no title companies are going to ensure that the sale, and mortgage companies are going to refuse to lend or refuse to cancel out their mortgages, it wouldn't really matter what the board decides to do, whether the governing documents allow it or not. It wouldn't. The regular people in the commerce and the commercial world, nothing would ever take place. I think that statutorily most of these things are covered. I know, at least in New Jersey, for instance, we have a condominium and other acts that talk about termination of condominium, eminent domain. They lay out the steps that have to take place to deal with these types of situations you're talking about. Destruction, casualty losses of a certain percentage. These are also regulated by statute. Meaning
we've had a lot.
The governing documents are probably irrelevant.
Well, we've hit a lot of gray ones already today, Dave.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying. So they absolutely.
That's important. That's important because, and the guys may have, I think, maybe opinions on this too. The statutory aspect is important because lenders and title companies and people out in the world of commerce, they need to be able to rely on a centralized sort of standard thing to deal with the real misery things that can come from this. They can't be expected to look at the governing documents of every single condominium or HOA they're dealing with, and they can't expect even more deal with the individual resolutions and the rules and all these things. So the more important types of things, buildings falling down, ending condominiums, 90% casualty losses, these are things that are generally covered, at least in my experience, by law.
Okay.
So that the people beyond the associations will actually have some sense of what to look for.
So John, I'm gonna kind of stop with the questions at the really specific. I have a lot of questions here that are really detailed, and I'm not going to dive into them. This is like a real, I didn't make this topic out of the blue and just to kind of get people to come here. It's a real topic, and there are gray areas where sometimes boards could find them in their position not to follow the governing documents outside of state and federal law. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all too frequently. I'll give you a real, more mundane issue. You have an annual meeting, you don't have a quorum. What do you do?
Okay.
Happens all the time.
Okay, excellent. Greg, let's, where are we with the insurance at this point? And then I'm going to go to Todd. I got to take 1 minute to catch up with all my questions. He's going to do a quick construction break, and then we're going to do closing thoughts. Greg, insurance, a board takes one of these actions and take it from there.
Insurance, this is where obviously your directors and officers liability policy comes into play for all the decisions that you're making as a board that could be challenged later. The problem with this, what we're talking about here, is when you're under the time constraints and you're making these quick decisions because you have to and you feel it's an emergency, later on somebody takes a lot of time to go pick it apart and figure out why you were wrong because they didn't like the outcome. And that's where you're going to rely on your directors and officers liability policy if a claim were to come. And a lot of these instances we're talking about, it may have been the only resolution. It was right with the law. It was the right thing to do. There possibly could be no damages. They may not result in a claim. So you can't be completely scared of this, but you need to make sure you do your due diligence that it is a defendable decision in the future, and why you made your reason.
Excellent. Thank you. Todd, let's just take a 2-minute break here while I catch up because I have so many questions I want to go through them before we do closing thoughts. I'm so surprised that this topic is, a lot of people are really emotionally tied into this topic here, really frustrated. But anyway, Todd, hard to segue you in, but we just did some recordings with yourself, and I was surprised by, I think, the warranties, right?
Warranties and permits you asked me about.
Yep.
So quick comment, Ray and I were discussing, what happens with warranties and permits. So it's very common when you pull a permit for a larger project, you do all the due diligence in the beginning, you get the permit filled out, you get your inspections on the way, the job's all finished, and you didn't close out the permit. This is very common. And what happens is that permit will linger for a year or two, and then when somebody comes into that community and needs to buy or sell or do something to their property, the town itself won't have a CO, certificate of occupancy, for that building that you are working on, and it may be challenging for the people who are buying or selling until that gets cleared up. That's one situation we find that happens a lot. And another situation is with the warranties. You pay for these extravagant warranties for lifetime roofs and 20-year decks, and you have all the information before the project starts, and then when it's all over, nobody has the written warranty, the actual physical warranty. And so it's very important to make sure you obtain those upon completion of your projects.
All right. I was shocked that people just lose things, but why should I be? People lose reserve studies all the time, I guess. Lawyers, any commentary? Quick, Kevin.
I would say the number one thing is to try and get all this stuff at the beginning of the project from the developer. Like I see all the time, they go do this stuff. 10 years later, somebody has a roofing issue. You're past the statute of limitations. They don't know who the company was that did it, whether there's a warranty. And a lot of that kind of stuff, whether permits are pulled. I mean, it's important to have a good contract and have your attorney review that too.
Dave, any commentary?
No.
Okay. John?
Yeah, no, I just like, if your attorney's getting involved in the contractual phase, you put a clause in there that, you have to get all sign-offs before you make the final payment.
Oh, and I did hear from the person I took a little bit. What is it? How do you pronounce it? Umbrage? What is it called? Umbrage? What is it when you're
Umbrage.
Yes. But give me the definition of that, Kevin. I got to be honest with you. I know kind of what it means, but what does it exactly mean?
Offense.
Yeah, offense.
But it means offense, like maybe too much, or maybe not. Well, anyway, I did hear from the person, and yes, I'm so happy you sent me the second note. I understand what you're talking about now, and I would love to talk to you about what you have going on and talk about it at the live stream. So I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I'll send you an email. There's an interesting angle to all this. I can't go into it because it's too detailed. I just can't. I can't do that. I can't mention names. The lawyers can, but I can't as far as locations. But thank you so much for sending that. Okay. I'm going to leave plenty of time for closing thoughts because I threw a lot out there. And I don't want to backtrack and not pretend that this isn't a real thing. But I will start with John. John, I have so many detailed situations here that I just can't get to that seem borderline to me. And a lot of them are about board members whose fellow board members are using the word emergency very loosely to get away with stuff. And I think that's what a big problem here I'm seeing. Can you take it from there, John? Because once again, we all know if it's an emergency, the board could do it, but here we are, emergency, reasonable.
Good point. So my suggestions, and I advise my clients almost all the time, get it in writing. How do you know it's an emergency? Well, this guy, I highly recommend getting an engineer involved, especially if there's structural elements, and they could say, yeah, this is might fail. Retaining wall, right? Will it fail? Definitely get it in writing. Another classic example is something involving a leak. Get the plumber, even if they put it on their bill, at least you have the opinion in writing of a professional and not, well, this is what I saw. Because when you go to court, what you observed is kind of meaningless. You need to have good evidence.
And by the way, audience, the lawyers got to all my, I know I had 10. The lawyers already covered them, which is, I truly do find you guys impressive. And the law is so complex, but like John already hit some of these about making sure that you do documentation. Greg even touched upon some of these already. So the lawyers are way ahead of us many times on these kind of issues, and absolutely 100% know what direction we're going in. John, yes, there's a lot of commentary that I'm seeing are about leaks. People are saying what leak is qualified as an emergency. You know, Dave, I want to go to closing thoughts with you also, but what about if the leak's going to absolutely destroy the building and it's going to cause a financial hardship, and they can't get the owners to vote for it? Greg, do the insurance thing on that really quick though, so I don't mislead people. Obviously, can you just run with it, please?
Well, you have a leak affecting.
Yeah, board has a right to do emergency repairs. We know that, right? Can you just get that out of the way?
Yes, board has a right to do emergency repairs. Obviously, the insurance company wants you to take care of the immediate problem. If there's a hole in the roof, you can get somebody out right away, a professional contractor, to go patch that up and stop additional future damage. So, and then once you have time, you could then reassess, get engineers involved, figure out the full resolution to it. But you're able to make, insurance companies want you to make emergency repairs quickly.
But I could see a board taking advantage of that. Who's going to decide what leaks an emergency repair and which one isn't? All right, Dave, Byrne.
Well, yeah, when you're talking about emergency repair, I think John was right on in terms of this idea that, you know, you can't just, boards just can't just say, well, it's an emergency. I think I made this comment earlier in the beginning, you know, way in the beginning, was about sort of the people who claim we have to do an emergency assessment, we have to an emergency, we have to do this, we have to do that, but then that's probably not factual. You probably go back through minutes and notes, and they've been talking about this. It's an emergency only because you didn't deal with it when it became first known. Emergencies are like, oh my God, there's a leak and this water's like pouring down the wall. That's an emergency in terms of the context. You really do have to nail down, quote unquote, emergency, what it is. It can't be left to the individual discretion. I shouldn't say that. For the most part, uh, you're going to have to justify in some way whether something's an emergency. You get some leeway, some discretion from a court, but you have to have something you can rely on.
You know, Kevin, I'm even getting things in here about sinkholes, right? When does a sinkhole become an emergency? The engineer says, we're not really sure, right? It could turn into this massive thing where people could fall in it and die, or it could just be a little sinkhole. That's nothing. They can't tell in advance. Does the board not go to the governing documents and redo the entire parking lot or change the way the parking lot is designed?
I mean, well, that's tough just because you're not going to be able to redo the whole parking lot in a day to handle that. So, I mean, obviously that's a situation that you're going to have to monitor, make sure there's barricades, it's appropriately put up, and then, have an engineer come out there, to fix all this. I mean, so that's definitely going to be a bigger thing that I wouldn't necessarily classify as an emergency that you're going to fix in a day or two or lose the building. So I think that's a little bit different situation than if it's, you're on the top floor, there's a huge hole in the roof and it's raining in your building and, going all the way down 5 floors below.
What about if this leak is creating an issue like with the elevator, someone is commenting, where it's going to be a financial disaster for the association if they don't fix it? It's not really an emergency, but the damage could be astronomical to the building. Kevin, this is back to this thing that happened with the building that collapsed. It sounds absurd that owners wouldn't approve it, but they're not. How does the board win? They don't do something, half the owners are going to sue them for not, and the other half are going to sue them maybe for doing it.
So, I mean, here's my number one rule for not following the documents. Go get an opinion from the attorney. You're protected by the business judgment rule. They will at least be able to give you some kind of cover. Where I see people get into trouble is they don't get that opinion and then they just do whatever they want or willfully ignore provisions of the documents. And that's where they really have the significant liability. So, in my experience, you're going to want that cover, the opinion from the engineer, something to show that you exercise appropriate business judgment to give you that defense.
That should be my last question really quick. Todd, really quick, in the roofing business, you must have to do emergency repairs all the time, right? The board just authorizes them. It costs what it costs, right?
Cost what it cost.
Okay. Greg, closing thoughts.
Excellent conversation. What you want to look at when you're making these emergency repairs, I think, is documenting why you did it, why you chose the contractor you chose, maybe to fix the building, and thinking about how that is defendable down the road. We don't really see claims to insurance companies where something was fixed. It's more when something was not fixed and not taken care of.
So Kevin, I'm going to bounce this back to you guys for the last question because I think it's really important, and I'm really glad that you mentioned it. What should, and I never asked it, I don't think, what should a board do if they are not going to follow the governing documents? Simple question.
Yeah, I mean, so number one, try and avoid getting stuck in this situation altogether. And that means amending the documents. Just most documents allow the boards to make repairs, determine what an emergency is, handle emergency repairs, impose an assessment to do all of that stuff. So if your documents don't give you that authority, it's better to do that now, spend a few $1,000, amend the documents, and don't end up in basically the no-win situation where you're going to lose one way or the other. If you do end up, in that situation, as everybody said, document it, get the opinion from the attorney. That is going to give you cover. But you will get into trouble if you have no advice that you're relying on from experts and you just decide that you're going to ignore the documents. That's where it becomes problematic.
This is a whole other topic from the audience. I wish there was some way for management companies to have the authority to get legal opinions without board approval and move forward with life and safety emergency repairs when you could not get the board to do so. Dave, is that another topic for the future? I meant,
well, yeah, that's a topic for,
wow.
That's a management company related topic, and when management companies have to quit. I would think a management company, all things being equal, there's all kinds of things you don't know what's going on in a situation. But if you're a management company and you're recommending that the board, this is an obvious example. You pick these absurd examples to make the point, but management company says, hey, we're missing the foundation, the left side foundation. Our building's going to fall down at noon. I need you to let me hire a guy for $1,500 to shore it up. And the board says, nah, it's too much money. You're gonna, and the building falls down, you're gonna be in the newspaper. To the extent anybody has newspapers anymore, it'll go viral probably. Your management company name will be in some viral thing, and but you have to resign if the board won't facilitate its obligations because you'll be, you won't have legal obligations probably, but you'll certainly have business and practical obligations.
We're down to 2 minutes, but I know we've had discussions, and I've had discussions with attorneys, and tell me if I'm wrong, who have also told me just quitting doesn't get you out of trouble also.
Well, in that situation, in that hypothetical, it would conceivably if they've been recommending steps and the board refuses to do them, and then they quit, and then something happens. Look, they may get sued because this is America. Everybody gets sued, but that doesn't mean they'll lose.
Right. And even on the attorney end, if somebody's not following our advice, we will let them go if there's a consistent pattern of that. That's true with any kind of professional in this industry. If you're not following their advice, they're not bound to that.
Right. All right. So Dave, I just want to make sure we hit this one with every one of you guys. I'm a board, and we need to go outside the governing documents. We feel it qualifies under some of the aspects we've spoken about. What advice do you have for that board, Dave? It may be the same as Kevin.
I'll say it real quick. I think that for the most part, counsel with experience in these areas will not have to struggle too hard to give a board the discretion to make the right decision, whether it's disability related issues or, housing, the discrimination related issues, or fixing things, or, dealing with governmental. The law pretty much, if your lawyer is, I think, handling these types of things, is able to put you on the path to being able to take care of your business without worrying about what your governing documents say. And I mean that not in a dismissive way of the governing documents, but in a productive, professional, responsible way.
John, really quick, I want to ask you the same question. Your board, you need to go outside your governing documents. You feel it's justified. What should you do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to push back on the idea that the governing documents hamstring you from doing this. If this is
Yeah.
part of maintenance, whether it's emergency or not, maintenance and repairs, the board has board discretion. There's no financial limit. And if a board is saying, well, we don't have the money, and
Okay.
that's when you have problems. So yeah, so I agree with what Dave said.
And Greg, thanks for letting me joke around. I know you're not really scared. So I know you know everything about this business and stuff. So I appreciate it. Were you surprised about anything today, Greg? Seriously, I meant not too much. I know you really do know everything. You do.
Yeah, I mean, in general, when you say it first,
Yeah.
you don't ever want to go against your governing docs. But in this, if you back it up and you have the right reasons, this was an excellent topic, and we covered some really good examples.
Yeah, I was surprised. All right, I want to thank everybody for being here. There's so many questions. I'm going to try to go through them over the next couple of days and see if I can get them answered. So many scenarios, and maybe we'll go back to this one. Thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it very much.